Hello, and welcome to the Three Eyes podcast with your host, Megan Sweet, applying intellect, insight, and intuition to promote personal and school-wide transformation. On this podcast, we'll be talking about education, mindfulness, and transformations both large and small as people start to learn how to use their intellect, their insight, and their intuition to promote both their personal and school-wide transformation. While this podcast is specifically for educators, anyone can get some information out of this.
This podcast is going to be today an interview with Shazia Imam, who is a life coach and a successful podcaster. She has a coaching business called The Life Engineer. She supports people to take the leap to create the lives that they truly want, from finding their soulmate, acquiring a new home, and living their life purpose. She also has a podcast called Feminine and Fulfilled. And after less than 1 year of doing her podcast, it has already become the 12th most popular Muslim podcast in the world. And in her podcast, she interviews powerful women from around the world to share their stories of success, their struggles, and how they've overcome challenges, as well as speaking on topics like the law of attraction, overcoming fear, and finding your unique voice. Shazia has an infectious personality that comes through in everything that she does. And if you look at her website, she has a catchphrase on the first page, which I just love, and I feel like it sums up who Shazia is perfectly. And her catchphrase is, "We'll get your grass so green that even you'll be jealous." And to me, it's, one's playful, aspirational, and empowering, and that's exactly who Shazia is and what you'll experience today. Shazia has a unique ability to make you feel completely heard, while also uplifted and joyful, even when you're confronting and dealing with difficult emotions and experiences. If you go to her website, you'll be linked to, which is linked to this podcast, you'll also be able to get her free download, 10 Secrets to More Time, ways to maximize your time so that you can realize your goals. For me personally, and why I thought it would be good to interview Shazia today, is that I'm on a mission to bring more love and compassion into the world and into our education settings in particular. And on this podcast, we'll be talking about different ways that we can learn to see with our three eyes: intellect, insight, and intuition, and how to integrate those insights that we gain from those three lenses to live more balanced, empowered, and fulfilling lives. And in my book and in my work, this is called doing the self-work. So learning to prioritize and empower yourself as a precursor to whatever you want to do to make the world better. We'll also be discussing why coming to love and accept yourself through this self-work is the first step to creating educational settings that will allow all our students to thrive. And this means that sometimes we'll be discussing the technical aspects of creating educational change, and other times we'll be talking to people that are embodying that work. And this is the other part of my framework, which is called doing the schoolwork. But today, we'll be talking to Ms. Shazia Imam, who's going to be helping us to really understand why doing this self-work is important. And we'll be learning about how she developed her coaching business and what inspired her to take the leap to starting her own podcast. So welcome, Shazia. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you got started?
Sure. Thank you so much, Megan, for having me on. I'm really excited. So what got me started with this work?
Yes, maybe with life coaching first, and then how did you come to do the podcast?
Sure. Okay. So I'm going to take it back actually pretty far, but I'll make it a short story. But I'd like to start off as a little girl because like so many young girls, I learned very quickly about what it meant to do everything right. And so that was the story of my life, getting those gold stars, right? You're in the education space, so those gold stars mean everything. And when we're little, it's gold stars on a chart, it's A's on a report card. And as we get older, it's the other gold stars of life. And so for me, I was really doing a great job getting those stars, getting a great degree from a great university, then graduating and getting a prestigious job at a consulting firm. And then after that, I thought it was time to get married. So got married, found a great guy, got married, and, just checking those boxes off, getting all of those gold stars. And I was really excited to start a family. So after some time, we were expecting, and I thought, here we go. Everything is going to be all done. And I'm going to be have this perfect report card of, I don't know who it was going to. And for me, what happened is that I couldn't have even imagined what happened next. So when I went to go to deliver, which was much earlier than expected, the doctors had told us that the that there were complications and that our baby would not survive. And so I got to hold my son in my arms for just a few moments. And those were the best moments. Those were the best moments to really connect and to know that I'm a mom. And although I wasn't going to be doing that with him in terms of raising him, that he was a part of my life. And so he passed away a short while later. And from there, things just really unraveled. And so all of these gold stars that I built up just started to unravel. Losing my son and then losing my husband. Our marriage did not survive after that. And really being left on my own. And for me, that was probably the biggest struggle, the biggest challenge I'd ever experienced, because there's no handbook for that. There's a handbook, there's a manual, there's, people talk about how to achieve the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, but nobody talks about when those things don't happen. And for me, what I realized is that I had to go on a journey of self-discovery. I literally didn't even know who I was. I had spent so much of my life living for others, living for these gold stars that I didn't know who I was without those things. And I had to learn that in a really painful way. But as with most things, things happen divinely for the best. And so part of that journey as I was discovering myself was discovering a lot of fun things, number one, doing a lot of new things and thinking about what it is that I would want if I was on my own, which was actually something I had to write down. I had to sit and write down and do it because I really didn't know. And another part of that was trusting and following a new path into a new career, which was coaching. That was something that people had told me to do for some time. And I just always thought, that's weird and kind of woo-woo. And I don't know, am I going to be like some weird woman like spinning in the fields of the grass in some bohemian dress and, like going off the deep end. And, here I was on my own. So I was like, you know what? Why not? Let me go. And so I went for the training and I just loved it. I absolutely loved it. And so from there, I just said, you know what? Okay, this is good. I'm gonna start a business, and that's really where the coaching business started. It started really just from discovering my own self, and it could have been a number of things. Mine happened to be coaching, but it could have been a number of things. Women take leaps all the time into different things. So from there, I started my business 4 years ago. And in the meanwhile, I've worked with a number of women, and like you already shared, thank you so much. They've had amazing transformation, because what is possible for a woman when she really follows what she wants and really follows her dreams and her deep desires is a joy and a contentment that cannot be found no matter how many gold stars you accumulate. It just can't. It really has to be what you deeply want. So about this time last year, I was really thinking about, okay, what's next? I felt like my business had been established, but I was still coming up against a roadblock. It really wasn't to the point where I wanted things to be, and I didn't know what was happening. And I'll be totally transparent. I was really in a dark night of the soul. I was really wondering, what's my purpose? Why am I doing any of this? Does it even matter? And so I was in this place of feeling so stuck. And I decided to take a break from everything, from social media, from TV, from any information coming at me, because we live in a world where information is coming at us all the time. Like, we are just inundated with stuff that it's like you can't even think anymore, let alone process. So I had gotten this idea to turn everything off for a week from this fabulous book called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And she had recommended this as part of the book. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to do it. So I turned everything off, and not even within 24 hours, literally like one day falling asleep, next morning, I have this inspiration come to me to start a podcast. And I'm like, podcast, like that was not, and when I was thinking about my next steps in business, podcast was not on the list at all. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know, like I knew it was up and coming, but I just didn't have it in my plan. So I said, you know what? I'm going to trust this, because I knew it was a divine inspiration. And I said, okay, I'm going to do it. So I went and did it, and 4 months later I launched. And the journey of podcasting has been so fantastic that it has been fun. It has been fun. There's been a lot of things in my business that have not been fun. I'll be honest. Like sometimes I think I traded a job for another job, which is not what, I wanted to do. But the podcast for me and being able to share my voice and the voice of other powerhouse women, it's just fun. It's like having conversations just like you and I are having, and then allowing other women to be inspired to do what they're meant to do in the world. So as you mentioned, my podcast has really done well. I mean, within 9 months, it's, my podcast was selected as the top 12 in the Muslim podcast in the world, although I don't focus at all on Muslim topics, but I am Muslim, so that's awesome. And the number of downloads, hit 10,000, over 10,000. We're listened to across 6 continents, over like 45 countries. So it's amazing because I'm connecting with people all over the world. So this initial inspiration by trusting it has really grown into something so big. And it's just a reminder to me that it's not so much about what we do, but why we're doing it. Is it something we want? Is it something inspired? Is it something that is part of our path? Because the more that we do that, the more we feel in flow. So that was quite a long answer to your short question, Megan, but there you go.
I mean, it's a wonderful answer, and I appreciate you sharing your story too, including the loss of your son, which is a big one and a personal one. So thank you for sharing that. And, what struck me as you were talking is how much we do that gold star striving in our lives. And I resonated with all of that because that's absolutely been what I've been doing in my life as well. I went to the right schools and had the career and really actually over the last few years, I spent a lot of time just feeling quite miserable and stuck and like the joy is gone and not being super clear why I did any of those things in the beginning. And what was neat when you were talking too, and actually even the idea of these gold stars is Michelle Obama talks about that a lot as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you've read her book, but I just finished it. And
I did read it, and I just saw her a few days ago.
You saw her, you went, I'm so jealous.
It was amazing.
Right? So amazing. And she has that same notion, right, of like she strived, she went to Ivy League schools, she got the perfect job, and then suddenly she realized it really young, which I think is quite extraordinary, that she wasn't happy. Mm-hmm. And she decided to do what she calls taking a swerve, just to really just stop and figure out what she wants to do and to follow her joy and to not have it be necessarily the traditional path that she had been building for her whole life. And so I just think it's really so inspiring when people do that. And it's exciting to hear that that's what you've done as well. And it's encouraging. And for those of us that are kind of on the outside, sometimes we're feeling like we're stuck and bogged down and making us feel a little bit like there isn't an option, which is a lot of how I've spent my time, right? I'm like, okay, I want to do something else, but I've got a kid and I've got a mortgage and I've got all these things. So it's not practical. It's not wise. And so when women like you step forward and say that you're following your path and that you find joy there and fulfillment there, and that actually when you take that leap and step, great things can happen. In the framework of my book, that's really about what can happen when you use all 3 of those eyes together. So when you kind of use your head to figure out how to do things, but you don't let your head get in your way. So the head, the intellect can often be those should haves or shoulds, the gold star striving, for example. It's not a bad thing, but you need to balance it. And then insight is you learning from your life lessons along the way and finding how your story starts to shape who you are. So integrating your lessons and your experiences from your first marriage and the loss of your son, being aware and paying attention to the dissatisfaction that was growing and choosing to look inward to do something about it. Mm-hmm. And to me, the intuition is that moment that you got, right? You step down, you step away from social media and from all these other things that were coming at you and just really connected with yourself and were able then to hear that quiet message that was there all along, which is to start a podcast. And then, to start it and within a few months being so successful, it just shows what can happen when those things are working together. And so I think that's super exciting. As you've been starting out, what are some of your first moves? I mean, I've been hearing a lot of different people talking about starting things, but then they kind of stop themselves because it feels big or heavy or hard. And so I'm just wondering what some of your opening moves were when you decided to go for podcasting, and how did you keep yourself going when it got hard?
The thing is, I think whether it was podcasting or starting my coaching business or really just restarting my life, right, in this new paradigm. I love when you talked about the insight, really. The common theme that I always come back to, regardless of the project, and I can speak specifically to podcasting, but it really is across the board, is that I have to really trust, because I like to be in control. It's easy to want to be in control when you feel out of control. And I think when we're really struggling, or when I'm really struggling, or I'm feeling off kilter, like I just want to grasp onto something. It's like almost like you're falling in a black hole, and you will grasp onto anything to feel like you can just have your bearings straight for a moment. Mm-hmm. But the truth of the matter is, we're not actually falling into an abyss. That's not what's happening. And when we allow ourselves to let go and to really trust, and this is a very difficult exercise, I understand that, but it's a lesson I keep learning over and over again, that when we really let go, you're not going to fall. You're actually going to be held and led to the right place. And things will come to you in ways you never imagined, and you will be led to things in ways you never imagined. So when I think about the podcast, some of the things that were difficult for me is that, I got into the intellect. No, what was the word you used? Yeah, the intellect, the head part, right? Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, here are the things to do. Here's how to set it up. You do X, Y, Z, make sure you have a mic, and make sure you have guests, and make sure, like blah, blah, blah. Okay, fill in the blanks. There's so many things to do. And I was following those things because I'm like, okay, I'm doing this. So that part was okay. But where I hit a stumbling block? The biggest one I had was titling my podcast. Mm. I literally probably did the work in about a month to prep, but it took me 3 months to come up with a name.
Oh, wow.
3 months, because I got so in my head. And then I was like, I don't know what to call it. And, the first title I had wanted was Fiercely Feminine, but it was taken. And I was like, I don't know what else. And I tried all these iterations. I had all these meetings with different people. I mean, it was kind of crazy, right? And at the end of the day, it's just a decision point. So another lesson I've learned in my life is to just make a decision.
Just do it.
It doesn't have to be perfect. Mm-hmm. So that's the other thing. So number one is to trust. The second thing is to let go of perfection. Mm-hmm. So I ended up going with the title Feminine and Fulfilled, because it really embodied what I want in the world. Is I want to feel feminine and fulfilled, and I want that for other women too. It's in our femininity that we will find fulfillment. It is not in the masculine energy that we have all been assigned to in this world. Not to say masculinity is bad, but everything isn't about the doing. It's not all about the linear. We're women. We cycle. We have periods. We have moods. We have, we can multitask. We are nurturing. I mean, there's so many things. If anybody wants to check out, listen to Feminine and Fulfilled, episode number 4 on feminine. So I won't get into all that. But what I will say is that, once I made the decision to name it, then it was like, boom, 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 done. And my podcast actually is still not perfect. It really isn't. I still don't have an intro to my podcast. And I'm about to hit 50 episodes without an intro. And I was saying it to my husband the other day, which I forgot to say in my story earlier. I did end up getting remarried, and I found my soulmate. Although it's not perfect, let me just say, but he's a wonderful, wonderful man. So I was talking to him the other day, and I was telling him that, oh my gosh, I don't have an intro, and I'm about to hit 50 episodes, and I can't even believe it. And he's like, isn't it better that you have almost 50 episodes with no intro than no episodes at all?
Right.
And I was like, yes. Oh my gosh. Like, yes. Like, again, another reminder to go for it. Let go of the perfectionism and go for it. So that has been my mantra with this podcast. There have been a lot of quirks along the way, a lot of mess ups, but I just record week after week. And I am seeing the fruits of my labor of love. And it's not just about the stats, because that can sometimes make me feel bad. How do I compare? Oh, that person over there already has so many downloads, or how come they're so popular? So I've decided I'm not paying attention to any of that, because the greatest stats that I get are the feedback from real women who email me and say, I love your podcast. I wait for it every week. That is what makes me think, yes, this is why I'm doing it. I literally feel like I'm having a conversation with these women. So there has to, underneath everything, be a deep reason for why you want something too. Because if I didn't really care about connecting, then this podcast would feel like a bunch of work, but I love it. I literally, when I sit here by myself at a mic alone, speaking into it, I imagine that I'm speaking to these women, and I love it, and it lights me up. So it's important. The third thing that I would emphasize, that it's important to really have a deep desire and a deep want, because in our adult life, really, truly, nobody is making us do anything. If you really think about it, nobody is saying you have to, let's use the mortgage example, you have to pay a mortgage. You could sell your home and rent, right? Like, there's other ways to do it. There's many ways to live. There's many ways to do a lot of things. So we don't have to subscribe to the way we think, quote unquote, it should be. And when we really allow ourselves to desire what we want and to go for it, the openings will come. So going back to the original abyss that, I was worried about, like, just totally falling into, it's every time I let go. It is every time that I trust, every time I follow my deep desires, every time I let go of that perfectionism, that it's literally like miracles occur. That sounds cliche, but it's true. Miracles will occur. And I'm like, oh, that was really easy.
Right.
So easy, versus feeling like when I'm trying and I'm holding on tight and I'm like, oh, it just feels so hard, like the energy, you can feel the difference in the energy completely.
Yeah, totally. I love what you said. I mean, a couple of things you said really resonated with me. One is just the reframing. So the gift of your husband and him saying, like, like, right, you have 50 episodes without, a lead in, and isn't that great? Rather than that being a sign of failure, and just learning to embrace, like, the reality of that, and getting out of some of those should haves, and again, kind of going, because it's so easy, the gold stars kind of pull us right back over, and it's so easy and so quick to be kind of have
who
those.
is giving out the gold stars? Nobody.
I know.
Hard.
What's that about, right?
What is it about?
That alone is like, it's crazy, but it's there, right? And I think mostly it's our own, again, if I'm going to reference back to Michelle Obama, like this I'm not good enough message. Like, it can't be that my message is like that I am, just as I am, is good enough. And so that's the other part of what was really resonating about what you said, which is that, yeah, we could get stuck in perfectionism and in cycling in that, and then never get out of the gate. And for me, that came up a lot when I wrote my book this last year. Of, by myself at 4 a.m, writing before my son got up, and similarly, I was writing to an audience. I was imagining who I was talking to, and it just, when I was allowed myself just to be in that space of flow, then things felt great. And then I'd have these moments where I'd step back and I'd pause and be like, well, who am I to be talking about this? And why should I be writing this? And this is a lot of time and energy, but the joy and the passion that I felt as I was writing just kept carrying me along and kept motivating me to get up in the morning and open my mind and my eyes too to all sorts of things that were probably there all along. I just didn't see them. And I'm wondering if you had the same thing. Like, for me, I would be like writing one section of the book, and then all of a sudden it was like on Facebook, there'd be a posting around that same topic. And then suddenly someone would be talking in my ear about something else, all related to what I was privately by myself in the morning writing about. So I remember I was, in the book, I have a section on all these different kinds of mindfulness strategies, ways that you can kind of connect back with yourself so that you can you can hear that inner voice that's there. And truly, as I was writing that section, then there was like 2 or 3 Facebook articles that popped up around different strategies for grounding yourself in nature, just kind of randomly. And then I was, on the bus, I think actually, and I saw a quote from a kid that talked about, another strategy. And it was like suddenly the universe, I felt like, was kind of meeting me where I was and giving me some of that guidance and that support. And so I'm wondering, maybe as our final question, what are the places that you find inspiration now, or how are you moving forward as you're in this place where suddenly you're finding yourself with a great deal of success and an audience? What's kind of the next step, and how are you continuing to keep motivated?
So for me, the inspiration moving forward, it's such a good question that you're asking, because I'm kind of getting back. I'm in this place right now where I'm feeling so inspired and almost stuck again. And I feel like I'm coming up against the next level. Like, we're always up leveling in our lives. So I feel like I'm hitting that next up level of, okay, I'm ready for the next step. And then there's a part of me that wants to hold on and be in control. And then there's another part of me that has learned now that no, like, let go and trust. So the thing that I have found for me most recently, and it was always there, even since I was little, I have always loved to dance. I have always loved to dance. Now, I was not a dancer growing up. That was, I'm a child of Indian immigrant parents. That's not a part of our culture at all. So I didn't do any dancing, but I've always really loved it. And I recently discovered that I love dancing to a whole new level. So when I was sharing earlier my story about when I had to really discover myself, one of the fun things I did was starting a hip hop class. I started doing that and I loved it. And now what I find myself doing is movement completely on my own, dance completely on my own, like really dancing in the mirror or dancing in the living room or wherever. Like I'm doing it even without a choreography, even without somebody telling me, here are the moves. I'm going into a space now of pure movement from something within. And truth be told, I mean, I'm never going to be up on stage doing this dance. Like, nobody's going to be coming to watch me, but that's not what it's about, right? It's about me feeling into my body and allowing myself to just completely be free. So that's really where I'm gathering a lot of inspiration, because I find for me, it allows me to quiet my mind. It allows me to really be free. And it allows for me to almost start flowing physically, like literally with my body. And then energetically, the same thing happens as well. And so I've been doing that as a daily practice. And I have found that that has really helped to almost reground me over and over again in what I'm doing, because ultimately my purpose now is about freedom and expression. And I want to feel inspired around that. It's not about what's the next thing I'm going to do, because that was always my question before. What's next? What's next? What's next? Now it's being present, being in something that I love, that really inspires me. And okay, maybe at the end of the day, if somebody were to get a status report from me, maybe I don't have a litany of items to share, but that's okay, because it's about what I'm sharing potently rather than just a bunch of stuff. So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And something you're saying there, which is beautiful, and I want to point out, and I'm sure it's true, but I'm going to make first the assumption that when you set out to do your podcast, you weren't like, what I'm going to do is be the 12th best, most popular, Muslim podcast in the world, or having any of those goals, right? What you did is, you took one step and put one foot in front of the other, and actually even you named noticing when you were starting to do judging or comparing mind between you and other people, and stepping out of that and continuing. What I love about what you keep saying is you're continuing to reconnect with your body and with your reason, not for anyone else's, but your reason for doing it and your joy. And the dancing is such a beautiful example of that too, because it's all about kind of holding on to that feeling that feels good. And so I think often we think that we have to, like, we want to be a successful podcaster, we need to keep doing stuff to be a successful podcaster. But what we need to do is we need to keep embodying because being a successful podcaster or doing the podcast gives you joy and makes you feel happy. So creating other spaces where you feel joyful and happy also multiplies that feeling in, or that opportunity and the experience in your podcast or in other parts of your life. And so it's all about opening up to the positive feelings no matter where you are. I talk about this in my book too. And for me, it was a big eye opener. And maybe that's why I'm connecting with it, with what you're saying, which is just remembering to feel the good feelings no matter where they are. So I think a lot about teachers, for example, and lots of times classrooms are just chaotic messes and kids are running around and it's the most painful, stressful place to be. And while I think it's fine and good for teachers to imagine what that classroom would look like and start working towards having that classroom, they can also, though, conjure that feeling anywhere they are. So if they want a calm classroom where people feel safe and comfortable, anytime they create spaces where they feel safe and comfortable, or where they help others feel safe and comfortable, whether it's at home, with their family, with their friends, they're reproducing that same feeling and experience that then will automatically transfer into the space in the classroom. And so for you, continuing to connect to your joy and your inspiration and embodying who you are, I'm sure is helping you in embodying and making your podcast so successful, because you're just stretching those moments where those experiences are accessible to you and kind of training your body and your spirit and your heart to keep creating those opportunities for yourself. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I mean, I love the example you gave to teachers. I mean, going back to the topic of control, what if we shifted controlling our energy or what we want? It's going back to what we want, like what it is that I want. When I follow that, yes, then what is created is an output of that. So think about the energy that each person is coming in with. And you're right. Like for me, when I'm inspired, when I'm embodying these feelings of expression, that's what I'm creating out of the world. And isn't that great? It's like a win-win. It doesn't have to be a lose-win where I'm always the loser. Like we get to move away from that. It's a win-win. The more that we step into who we are as a whole, and we fully step into that, the output will be beyond what you could have ever imagined. And that is my lesson each and every time.
Well, that's so beautiful, Shazia. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I'm always inspired when I talk to you, and I always leave, your joy and your spirit are so infectious that I always leave smiling and feeling buoyed afterward. And today is no exception. So thank you. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us today. If you want to learn more about Shazia and the work that she does, then I absolutely strongly encourage you to check out her website, which is www.thelifeengineer.com. There you can access her podcasts. You can read her blog posts, which are also super amazing and inspiring. You can learn more about her message and her story, and learn about how to do some coaching with her, which I could not recommend more. She's an amazing light, and someone that you will, like me, benefit from spending time with. So thank you, Shazia.
Thank you.
Thanks again for joining us today. If you're ready to transform your educational setting from the inside out, I'd encourage you to order a copy of my book at Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com, the link to which is in the description of this episode. This book will transform you by giving you greater self-awareness, an improved connection with yourself and appreciation of yourself, clarity over your beliefs, their origins, and how to combat the ones that aren't working for you, improved decision-making capabilities through using all three of your eyes, intellect, insight, and intuition, and ultimately greater student achievement as you learn that working on yourself can create the transformations you're seeking in your school setting. Thanks again. To learn more about us and to access our blogs, free downloads, and our calendar of events, please check out our website at www.your3eyes.com. That's spelled YOUR, the number 3, EYES.com.